Yo, 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 what is up, y'all?
He actually did it.
This is Omar live from the podcast studio in my room, recording with my good friend Juan. Welcome back.
You have to add it's your room. In my room, by the way. Is this in anyone else's room? This is mine.
Yep. My little shack. We are back at it again with another great episode. The Intrynsic Podcast 2.0.
Yep.
Now, for those of you that have noticed, we have a new logo, which will probably be down here. And the reason for that is
somewhere there
is we wanted some change. We constantly talk about change. We constantly talk about improvement and growth and all that good stuff, right? And we got to the point where, like, you know what? I think we've outgrown our old logo. I think it's time for some change. Is that right, Juan?
That is 100% right, Mr. Omar.
Thank you for agreeing with me. Okay, back to just chilling back. So we essentially thought about this a long time ago. It's something that we've been constantly thinking about, and I think we kind of put it off for some time, and then we actually started trying to work on it, and then, lo and behold, now it's official. Now we got a new stamp, a new logo, a new identity, if you will. And I might say I am very proud of it. We put a lot of work into it. Both Juan and myself put a lot of work into it. But here's the thing. It's not just a logo. It's not just a stamp. It's not just a rebranding even. Like, this is something bigger. This is essentially us beginning the new phase of this podcast, the season 2, if you will. This is us opening more doors for ourselves and also for the people that listen to this. This is a big, big, big change. And let's just start off by giving ourselves a little round of applause, huh? What about that, huh?
Let's do it. Yep.
A little pat on the back.
Yep.
You're doing great, Juan. You're doing great.
Good job, Omar.
Thank you. And you're welcome.
Thank you. I forgot to say thank you. There it is.
This is something very special to us. We really do enjoy this podcast, and we've so far, I would say, done fairly well. But of course, there's always improvements you can do, and there's always things that you can change. And well, it was just a matter of time. But let me switch over to my good friend Juan, because I've been talking for too long already.
Yeah, it's been. I'm at a lack of words, to be honest. The thing that's in my mind is something, I don't know if it was you or if it was me or if maybe I just heard it somewhere, which, like, we're a really new podcast. And right. I had a hard time coming to terms with that because I mentioned it previously. The first episode felt like the biggest mountain. The first 5 episodes felt huge. The first 10 episodes, I was like, wow. And every episode we've done after that is a whole endeavor, as you know, right? I mean, previously we were recording in GarageBand. That was a whole thing. It took time. Right now we're doing it on Riverside. Now we're also putting out a lot more posts. We're putting out reels, a lot of different things. We're actually treating this as like a business, an organization, rather than just, plain and simple, it was a hobby previously, right? It was amazing. It was cool. It was fun. Nothing wrong with that, of course. But there's this higher level of excellence that's required once you actually agree with your partner or by yourself. Hey, let's make this into something. Let's build this. Let's actually impact a lot more people. Let's just try, right? I mean, it's in the logo itself. But Absolutely. For me in particular, again, it's still weird to me to call ourselves a young podcast, because what are we, like 65, 66 episodes, not counting the uncut episodes? Not exactly sure. The only thing that I was like, okay, yeah, maybe we are new, is every other podcast that I've seen is like in the hundreds. And I'm like, wow, that actually, I can't even imagine hundreds. Right. Just because, again, these 60 something episodes that we've done I mean, probably like 80 total, have been hard. Genuinely, they've been hard. And I don't
Yeah.
usually make a note of like, hey, this is hard, because as I said before, like everything's hard. Why even acknowledge it? But this has actually been hard. And so I think that's why for me personally, genuinely, I'm shocked that we're still considered a new podcast. But with this new logo, with this new rebranding, it is kicking in a little bit more in terms of like, we really are just getting started, right? We really are just getting started and setting ourselves up for the future, right? This logo really isn't about today. It isn't about last week. It's really about the next 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, year, 2 years, however long we decide to do this. That is what it's for. It's not for today. It's not for the yesterday. It's for what comes in the future. So I'm a little bit at a loss for words, even though I haven't stopped talking. The irony. But yeah, that's those are my emotions. Those are my feelings. Super excited as well.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up, that the quote unquote, like us being like a new podcast, right? Literally just like a few hours ago, I was talking with my dad and I was showing him like the new logo. And when I showed it to him, like, you know, he gave us compliments and all. And then he's like, yeah, well, that's great. You know, I mean, you guys are still starting off, you know, you'll figure it out. And when he hit that, like when he said that, like it hit me like almost like I wanted to get offended. I was like, wait, hold on. What do you mean we're going to figure it out? Like we got to figure it out. Like, this is it. Like, what do you mean?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, like, I just kind of had to like think to myself, I'm like, but we don't though. Like, this is just the next level. It's the next stage. And there's going to continue to be more development. There's going to continue to be more growth. There's going to continue to be bigger, more impactful changes that come out of this podcast, you know, not necessarily just directly towards us, but not towards the listeners as well. Right. And now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, yeah, it's totally true. And I think there's a humility that comes in this when you put yourself on a platform where people can consistently hear your voice, hear your mistakes, and now, of course, on YouTube, see our faces as we make those mistakes, right? And then laugh at ourselves. Yeah. There's a humility aspect to that a lot of people might not understand. It really does take a certain type of person to put themselves out there in this way, share things that are personal to them, things that are personal to other people whom they know, and do it solely for the purpose of trying to help themselves, help other people, right? And just trying to improve in general. It's not an easy thing to do. The conversations that we've had about myself on here, about my personal life, have been difficult for me to listen to afterwards, where I'm just like, oh God, like, why did I say that, you know? But it has to be done. This is the only way that you'll grow. This is the only way that you can develop yourself. And bringing it back to the podcast, it's like these hard steps of like, hey, you know what? I think the old logo is done. We can't use that anymore. We need something new. It's a tough pill to swallow at first, because you're like, but we put so much time into that, and like it was cool, you know, like it represented us, and it's like it was good then, but it's not good now, and it's not going to be good tomorrow. We need something new. We need some change, and it's that tough pill to swallow where you're like, okay, all right, because as we both told ourselves, like, we need a new logo. We already knew what was going to come from that, right? Yep. There's going to be that much more work, that much more discussing, that much more trying to pick what was the right one for us. And yeah, I mean, there was tons of them.
I think to note as well is like, again, these things just kick into my mind. I'm like, all right, we're new in terms of like overall episodes, which is like 65, 70, whatever it is. What I was thinking as well is, the vast majority of those episodes were actually before we decided, hey, let's actually do this. And it's not like we weren't trying, right? We were editing, we were putting out posts. We definitely were trying. We were putting in effort. But if, for example, we couldn't record 1 week, we're like, well, it's just 1 week, you know, we'll put something out the next week, right?
Yeah.
Not like irresponsible in any sense. Again, it's just a hobby. No one was forcing us, right? We weren't asking anything from anyone. We were just like, hey, why don't we just hop on, talk about things? That's really how this started, right? I didn't have any goal of where it was going. I was just thinking like, yeah, this would be something cool. This would be just doing something, right? And that's the thing that I was looking for personally when we started it. Like, hey, let's just do something different, right? something that other people aren't doing. Not so much the podcast. There's a lot of people doing podcasts. Having a podcast does not make us unique. What makes us unique is what we're talking about on the podcast. The things that we think genuinely matter. This isn't, if we really wanted to, let's say, grow this.
Mm-hmm.
There are plenty of other topics that we can talk about to get that sort of hype, right? To talk about celebrity gossip, to talk about Instagram influencers, to talk about, when Chris Rock got slapped, right? To talk about all these trendy topics. And there are so many new trendy topics every single day. But we resist that temptation because it's not what matters to us, and it's not what matters in real life. And it's not us saying, well, we know best and this is what matters and this is what doesn't matter. It's just a matter of priorities. Does some celebrity couple matter more than your life? Does Chris Rock getting slapped in the face matter more than your health, matter more than your mental well-being?
Mm-hmm.
No. So that's why we choose to do these topics. So again, we've done, most of our episodes have actually just been, hey, let's do this as a hobby. In actuality, the amount of episodes that we've done since we've said, hey, let's try to make this into a big thing. Let's try to make this into a company in the future. Let's try to make this into a production company, something else. Really, I think we've only done about 20 episodes since then. Maybe less, maybe 15, maybe 10. I'm not exactly sure. Right. Since we decided to actually do this seriously, it's only been a couple of weeks since then. Right? Yeah. Since we've really started, let's say, I think we're posting about 3 times per week now with a couple additional stories. We have video now. We have a new logo. We have guests that are coming along more often. First of all, guests in general, which we didn't have before.
Right.
All these different things that, again, your dad is a genius. We really are setting ourselves up. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, we really are. You can tell him I said that, by the way. We really are setting ourselves up for the future. And when I and Omar have planned for that, that is also the way I've thought about it. Because everything that came before that logo, it's not like it's invalid. It's cool. It made us who we are.
Yeah.
But it was unrefined. It wasn't us trying at 100%. It wasn't us 100% dedicated. Because let's be real. You have a job. I have a job. We have things in our lives. We have family. We have friends. We have relationships to keep. We have a bunch of other stuff. So that was, at least for me, my initial hesitation of really diving into this. Right. Mm-hmm. On some level, I was like, do I really? Because a hobby, you can just leave a hobby. If it's a hobby, I'm like, you know what? I'm busy today. Don't have time to go play soccer. Don't have time to go do jiu-jitsu. I'm fine. But when it's a company, when it's an agreement, when it's something that you want to build towards, you can't do that. Right. Mm-hmm. You can't take days off anymore.
Yeah. I think there's like a change of perspective that's come, both for Juan and myself. And for me, it's developed directly through this podcast. And, it has also on the side and other aspects of my life, but it's been primarily through this podcast because this has not only become a platform for me to speak and be open-minded on, but it's also been a platform where I can hear myself, which is, I'm not really sure where else you could have that. I think we're often always speaking. We're often always trying to be the speaker and have the mic in hand, but we never want to put the headphones on and listen to our own voice and see what we said or why we said it or where we were coming from. Right. And this podcast has essentially allowed that for me. And while I've been listening to some of these episodes while we edited them, both back in the day, more recently, I would laugh at myself sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, I sound like a complete a-hole. Or other times I'd be like, wow, I'm actually kind of smart, right?
Kinda.
Yeah. That's totally smart. Just
don't let it get to your head.
Yeah. And I think it's awesome. But moving past that, then I became more dedicated to this, where it's like, oh man, I really need to come up with some cool art or something, for the cover, right? And like I'd reach out to you for ideas because I'd be like dry. I'm like, I don't have anything like that I could possibly come up with. Like, throw me some ideas, like throw me a bone or something, like we got to make this look dope, right? And so then we started focusing more on, I guess, the visual aspect, right? Both through the cover art for each episode, as well as now, of course, being on YouTube, right? And having the actual video of our faces up. But people that listen to us obviously wouldn't know this, right? And so the main purpose of us doing this episode is, of course, making it official, letting everybody know, and telling you what exactly is the reason behind it, right? Because for the people that were with us in the beginning and maybe kind of lost track of us, disconnected, moved on to other aspects of their life, they'll remember us with that first initial logo, right? And then if they come back to us, they're like, what? Like, what's this? Like, it's just, that's not you guys. Like, that's different. And so...
And they would be right.
Exactly. That's kind of what I'm trying to move towards, is that, like you're saying, initially it was a hobby. Now it's something else. Now it's moving, and we're trying to strive towards making it something legitimate, like a business, right? In fact, I would even already call it a business, because there's so much energy and investment that's gone into it at this point, that it's like, yeah, it's very much that. And it's going to continue to grow, but at the same time, the investment is also going to grow as well, right? But that's what people don't understand, is that if you're serious about something in your life, like, you will dedicate everything that you have to it, like blood, sweat, and tears, right? Yeah, maybe back in the day we missed a day of posting or whatever, but now it's like we have like a set schedule for certain things to happen throughout the week. We have a set schedule for our episodes, right? And it has to happen that way. It has to function that way. And on top of that, we become so ingrained into this, the podcast becomes so ingrained in us, that if we don't record it on a certain day when we're supposed to, now we feel out of line, right? Like, we feel out of whack. It doesn't feel right. And so that's also to kind of show you guys that we're so serious and dedicated to this, and it means so much to us that we're continuing to develop this. We're continuing to grow with us, right? Because if we're growing, naturally the podcast has to as well, right? If we're reaching new levels in our life, naturally the podcast has to do the same, because that's the message that we're putting out there. That's what we stand for.
Yep. Totally agree. And personally, I won't lie, I was a little hesitant, because again, the jump from a hobby to a company / business is huge. I mean, to some extent we felt it, but I still think we haven't really felt it. I still think the things that are to come, this is what this actually means. And I was hesitant, but the reason I personally said, like, yeah, let's do this, is I would hate if this would just be a hobby and then it just trails off and then we stop. Not that I would hate, but it's like I'm actually okay with that. With the one exception being, what if we hadn't just kept it as a hobby? What if, again, I'm completely okay. Actually, that's a lie. I'm not okay with it. I would accept failure in this, right? Not that I'm okay with it, but I would accept it only if, though, we actually tried, right? Obviously, success is easy to accept. You're successful, right? And that is what we're planning for. That is what we're building towards. That is why we are starting to, again, really think about this as a company, as an organization, as something that has to keep growing and also grow sustainably, right? Towards something that Omar has mentioned, right? Like, it should be providing for itself. It should be sustainable, working on its own, right? Something that we're working towards. But in any case, this is something that I think has and is going to continue to shape our lives. Because, again, let's take the example that it's successful. Okay, successful. We have another source of income. We have another means of communication. We make a lot of other connections, which is really the thing that excites me about having guests and getting to know them on a personal level. But now let's look at the side of, what if it fails? If it fails, at that point, we would still have done a lot of different episodes. We would have learned how to schedule things. We would have learned how to manage some production of something. We would have learned content writing through posts and generating content on there. We would have learned how to actually think about this, even if it failed, think about this in terms of monetary value, in terms of value and advice and tips for other people listening to this. And then something that was already there previously when it was a hobby, what is the value to us on a personal level? Leave the money aside, leave everything else aside. From a personal level, what is the value of this? All right, so that's why I personally was okay, like, hey, let's do this, because either way, it's a win-win. There's no chance that this fails us as people and in our lives. There's a chance that it can fail as a business, but there's no chance that it's going to fail as an endeavor and as a growth-inducing act for both of us. Voila.
Beautifully said. You got it out.
Et voila. C'est tout.
I have no idea what you just said, but that was awesome.
I said that's all.
Okay.
Voila is kind of the French equivalent of boom.
Yeah.
But it sounds more fancy, so I can't just say boom.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's funny. I used to hear that all my younger years, like voila, and I'm like, yeah, me too. Yeah, never knew what the hell it was. Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly really proud of us. I'm proud of Juan. I'm proud of myself. Of course, as we've said in the past, like we've made some developments within our own lives, some which we've shared and others that we haven't. But even if you weren't to know anything about our lives or our personal lives or what we do apart from the podcast, I think it would show within the podcast. I think you would be able to pick up on things changing behind the scenes. And I'm not going to say like that's like our goal, right? Like for people to see like kind of like a narcissist, right? Like, oh, look at me, like look at what I'm doing over here, right? It's truly kind of like a selfless act in a sense that we do want to provide people with a platform that they can listen to where they can take things from, whether it's tips or topics that they want to look further into, different ideas, and gain some just general insight on life. And I have learned so much. It's like ridiculous. In the short span of this podcast, I've become a different person. Juan has also changed. He's become a better person as well. And I'm excited as to what's to come in the future. I'm excited as to what other avenues we're going to go explore, what other guests we're going to bring on, introducing merchandise to the podcast, right? In the beginning, I think we had 50 stickers that we printed out, right? Mm-hmm. And it was just kind of like something we just wanted to try out just because why not have a sticker of your logo, right? But as we continue to grow, as we continue to develop this podcast, I like to see us on a t-shirt. I like to see us on a hat. I like to stop wearing these hats of other brands and just have my own brand. I'd like to see us making deals with other companies, doing collaborations with other creators, where it's not just a guest. It's like we're actually collaborating with somebody else and we're trying to build something from scratch. I'm really excited because the thing is, as you continue to grow, as you continue to develop yourself, you'll naturally outgrow your environment, right? And that's essentially what's happened with the podcast. It's like we outgrew the GarageBand editing, right? We outgrew that. Okay. We outgrew just being on Anchor. Okay. Next phase. Okay. Bam. Spotify. Okay. Bam. Now you're Apple, iTunes, whatever, and now all of a sudden, bam, YouTube. Okay. And now it's like, we're not stopping there. Now we want to do other things, right? We want to continue to grow, and you're essentially outgrowing that environment, right? As soon as I'm opening one door and saying like, oh, look, this is cool, Juan, we should check out this room over here. It's like, yeah, but why not let's just get a new house, right? Like, why are we going through the little rooms? Why not just go for the house, right? Why are we focusing on such small little changes when we can just completely go for another house, right? Why focus on the house? Like, why not move out of the city? Why not move out of that town? Let's go change states, right? Why just the states? Like, let's go explore another universe. That's what I'm trying to talk about. It's like you'll naturally just kind of outgrow your own environment, and that's what's happened. And it's all for a good purpose, and that's again to continue to grow, to continue to develop this podcast, to continue to bring you guys great content, more great stuff, more great reels. I've been working on coming up with some cool stuff. And honestly, thanks for joining us. But if you've stuck around for this long, I mean, get ready. The future is really bright, and I'm excited as to what's to come.
True. And taking a step back from that, because I do want to get into the future of it, thinking a bit about the past as well. I mean, I've grown a lot, but also, and I mentioned it, I think it was a December episode where we were talking about, it was like a welcome back episode in some sort of sense. You could think about it, that one as a rebranding. This one is something different. But that one was in some sense a rebranding. And I mentioned already, and I won't go into it because you can just listen to that episode, that Omar has become a different person completely. Right. And the thing that excites me as well about it is we've both changed and you've become a different person. But now it's like, and it's something that you've mentioned before, it's like getting to, the first round or round zero, whatever it is, the foundation of who you can be. Right. Because coming from a difficult position, growing up in a difficult situation, for anyone out there who has been through that situation, even though in your mind you want to go to the stars right away, and that's something that I very much connect to, jumping from level 1 to like 5,000, there is sometimes a need to just get back to the basics, get back to the foundation and build who you are from the ground up, right? And the key term there is from the ground up. Forget about the up for now, just from the ground. And the growth that I've seen from you on that is also something that makes me extremely excited. Because in all honesty, I would not be doing this podcast or company or business that we're trying to do with who you were a year ago. I would just not. It just no disrespect, just I would not. But who you are now, that is one of the things where I was thinking in my mind, from a real perspective, you are my partner, right? In this podcast, in this business. And that I take very seriously. This isn't, putting friendship aside, putting other things aside. Can you trust them? That's my number one thing. Can you trust your partner? Can you trust them to have your back when you mess up? Can you trust them to, if they mess up, to be accountable and not run away from it, and not necessarily make up for it? I mean, you can make up for it, but also just basic learning. I failed here. I need to stop doing that. What caused it? Okay, let's just not do it like that. Let's try something else, right? And again, it's a loop there, because what made you grow? What made you become this person? The podcast itself. And now you've reached the other side of it, but now you have that foundation. And once you have that foundation, that's when growth stops being linear and starts being exponential, right? It really starts slow. Oop, you're someone else at this point. Then you can actually shoot for the moon. Then you can actually shoot for the stars. So I just wanted to mention that, because that was, for me, genuinely a big reason why I was like, okay, let's do this. I trust them. I trust that we can do this, because you're different now. Because, again, I trust. So, yeah, let's do this.
Thanks for trusting me, Juan. Yeah, to be fair, I don't think I would have taken myself seriously a year ago from now.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, looking back at it, there was a lot of insecurities that were coming into play, and there was a lot of emotions that were involved that weren't dealt with. Just a lot of things were going on in my life that I just really wasn't dealing with. And some of those things I continue to deal with. Other things have been dealt with, and it's just essentially just something that I checked off my list. At one time, these things could have been something that were literally keeping me from getting things done throughout my days, weeks, months. And then at one point or another, it just reached a point where it's like, done, just tossed aside and moved on. Right. And just to even have the ability to say that, I mean, I am very happy and proud of myself. And it feels weird to say that, because I never really say that, but it feels good. It feels good. And it feels right. I myself probably wouldn't be doing this podcast either if there wasn't an initial interest, right? Which came from you, when you're telling me like we just gotta try something new, just something different. Like we just gotta do something. And as unprepared as I was at the time, I very blindly said yes.
Yep.
I was like, yeah, why not? This will be fun. And then, of course, fast forwarding to where we are now, it's like we've had some fun, but it was also a lot of work.
And I'm glad you said a yes. Just a quick interruption. I'm glad you said yes. But you saying yes that quickly also made me think, all right, this is just a hobby for right now. Because anytime anyone's like, yeah, let's do that, man. That sounds like fun. I'm not trying to have fun here, but okay, let's keep it at this level right now. Because I don't think either you or even myself at that point realize how much effort and time this would take just to be a hobby. And it's the same reason why I get extremely excited and to some extent scared now that we've actually transitioned to fuck the hobby. Let's make something out of this, because that's something completely different. That is a very much so, you are spending a lot of time on it. You're spending some money on it. You're spending effort, emotions, these things that are very, very rare, right? Rare. And also you only have so much of it. You only have so much time. You only have so much effort, so much energy in each day. And to choose that in this day, I'm going to spend this amount of time every single week to put this out there, because I know it's going to be building something, whether it's a single brick, whether it's, I mean, more about like houses and foundations, whether it's whatever it is, a small little thing that you do to build that house in the very end, spending time, even if you're like, this shouldn't be taking me this much time, doesn't matter how long it takes. If you get it done, you become better. And again, you start laying that foundation. So I'm excited. I'm scared, because building a house, again, sticking with the analogy, is a hard thing. You don't know what's going to break. You don't know what's going to work. And then fail after maybe like 10 years. You figure it out as you go. And number one, to me, you keep yourself accountable. That is what I've learned with this like startup that I'm at. And that's specifically why I wanted to join that company. It's like, number one, culture. Number two, within that culture, can you keep yourself accountable? Do you have integrity? What is your actual purpose? If you're in this just for the money, get out. You're not going to be successful, right? You'll probably end up screwing someone over. Your business will fail in the end, because it always catches up with you. Even if it does well at the beginning, if you don't have the right intentions for doing something, it always comes back to bite you.
Right.
So doing that, keeping ourselves accountable, goals, incorporating and thinking about this as an actual business and an organization is something that, at least for me personally, it's like, okay, this is actually legit, because we're spending time to plan. We're spending time to actually say, hey, this needs to get done. Why have we not gotten it done? Okay, let's get it done. Right. Whereas previously it's like, it's all right, man. It's all right. Yeah, that looks cool. Yeah, let's just do it. Let's go with that. No recording today, or you're busy, you're going to go out. Okay, yeah, that's cool. We'll record next week.
Yeah. For those of you that are listening that perhaps also do a podcast or have other things that you do that would be considered a hobby, and you want to take it to the next level, but you don't necessarily know how or perhaps even why, the first thing that I'm starting to realize right now that changes from a hobby to creating something that's where like you're essentially taking it very seriously, it's commitment. It's commitment to yourself, or in this case, commitment to ourselves, commitment to the podcast now as well. But that's what it is. It's commitment. If you say you're going to do something, you do that. If you say you're going to, run a mile or whatever in a certain amount of time, you go do that. Okay, cool. Why though? Because it's a commitment. Because you committed to doing that one thing. You set your mind. You said you were going to do it, and you're going to fucking do it. There's no other way around it. You're not going to bend. You're not going to take the easy way out. You're not going to take a U-turn, try to find a different route. Like, no, like you said you're going to do it, and you're going to do it. And that's something that I lacked greatly in my life. any sort of commitment. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think I knew what the word was, to be honest. And so, yeah, perhaps when Juan presented the idea, like, hey, we should just try something, yeah, I didn't know what the hell commitment was. That's probably why I said yes so quickly.
Yeah.
But throughout the weeks, the days, the months since then, that's what I've learned, is that I've become committed. And initially, any sort of commitment might be kind of difficult, right? Because it takes work, it takes initial effort, it takes time to build up momentum, because you're essentially going from going 0 miles an hour to now picking up pace, and now it's 5, now it's 10, now it's 15, right? But once you built up that momentum, now it's natural. It's just a part of you at that point. You're committed. Yeah, things might come into play where we're like, hey, we actually need to reschedule, but we're still going to do it, right? And that's the commitment. Why else would we wake up or stay up late editing an episode or trying to put it together, upload it onto these platforms, creating additional stuff for Instagram? Why? Like, there's really no other reason other than it's just commitment, right?
Yep.
And I think for the people that are listening, if you want to create a podcast and you want it to be successful, you got to be committed. And this is us, again, very early in our stage, I guess, of our podcast, right?
Yep.
But us at this point, we've realized that you need to be committed. If you say you're going to do something, if you say you're going to be uploading every week, every other week, once a month, whatever, stick to that, stick to your guns and do it. Because otherwise, how will you ever create a following? How will you ever build something? How will you even find the, how you're using the example of the building a house? It's like, how will you even build a foundation to build off of if there's no commitment, right? It's essentially a contract that you're making with yourself. And no, we didn't sell ourselves to the devil, but we have created a contract with ourselves, metaphorically, through this podcast.
Yeah. And I don't know if this applies to you, but for me, what makes that commitment easier now is, again, before it was a hobby, it's fine, right? You're just doing it to have fun. I'm like, hey, Omar, let's go play some soccer. I'm just going to go have fun. We're cool, right? Is there some competition there? Sure. But you're just going to have mainly fun. And I'm curious if it's the same thing for you. But for me, what makes this commitment a lot easier, it was really hard at the beginning, but what makes it easier now is, this is me. This podcast is me. It's you. It is literally part of my identity. Mm-hmm. And that immediately, for me at least, when it clicked in and like, hey, by the way, like, your name is under this. This is you, right? This is you saying these things. This is you making these posts. This is you making the stories, making, editing the podcast, whatever it is, planning for the future, creating sprint goals, all these sort of things that we're trying to do. Once I realized, like, oh, that's a representation of who I am now. To me, everything just changed. Personally for me, I'm curious if it was the same thing for you, but for me, it was just like, oh, so this is who I am now. And me, who I am as a person, I think all we have is our identity. All we have is who we are as people.
Yeah. What
we stand for, what we believe, our values, go down the list. And if you start, again, I already learned this. This wasn't from the podcast, but previously, right? I mean, you stand by your identity. You are who you are, and you try to always improve it. So this now being part of me, there's no chance that it can be part of my life if it's not growing. If we stop growing, I don't want to do this anymore, right? That's just the very bare basic facts, because it's part of who I am now. And if some part of who you are resists growth and is not growing and is not the absolute best attempt to be better and to be the best representation of who you are, you're already failing yourself and you're already failing who you are as a person. And that, I think, is the worst thing that can happen to you, because you can fail a test, you can fail at a job, at an interview, you can fail at lifting a weight. Nobody cares. But when you fail at being who you are, everyone will notice, and you will notice right before everyone else does. And that just eats you up. And that's the thing. I'm not going down that path, right? So even if this fails, that's okay. But make sure that at every stage you put your best effort.
Yeah.
And then you live with the results.
Absolutely.
Is it the same for you?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, I don't, like I said, the things that I say on this podcast, like I really mean, right? I think it's sometimes it's like it's coming out of my subconscious. Like having a microphone in front of me really does allow me to speak my mind freely and truthfully. And there's things that I stand for that I don't even know until I heard myself say it on the podcast, right? But like once it's out there, I'm like, no, that's me. Like that's really me. You know, like I used to be very laid back and stuff, and then as I've mentioned, I become more hard ass. But I'm like, that's me though. Like that's genuinely me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was almost like doubtful of that at first. I was like, nah, that's just I'm going through some weird phase or something. Like I gotta knock it off. But then it remained the same over time. And I'm like, well, maybe this is just the real me that I was ignoring my whole life. Like maybe this is just my real identity. Yep. Right. And by kind of focusing in on that, I realized like, this is me. Like, this is what I stand for. The things that I say, these words that come out of my mouth aren't just words. Like I'm adding meaning to them day by day. When I wake up and I do something, if I make a mistake, like I'm doing my best to make up for that mistake. I'm doing my best to make sure I avoid that mistake in the future. If I'm at the gym, right? I was like sick like a few weeks ago. I was at the gym. I shouldn't have been at the gym. Like there was no reason for me to be there, but I was just like tired of just sitting around and not doing anything. I'm like, I got to prove to myself that I'm still me. Right. And then I told you, like, I was like basically like fainting and stuff. I was like, it was just terrible. Like one of the worst days I've had at the gym, but I was still happy that I even went to begin with. Right. Because I proved to myself like, yeah, that's still me. I'm still alive. Right. And yeah, so it's very much a part of me. I don't think I would be myself, quote unquote, if I wasn't doing this podcast, because this has allowed me to be a truer version of me, the real me. This has allowed me to vocalize my true inner thoughts, my weaknesses as well. It's just allowed me to be me.
100%. And before we wrap this episode up, let's actually dive into what the future holds, what we're trying to do, the future content that people can expect, not just on Instagram, but overall on the podcast. I'll start for me, the thing that makes me the most excited, the guests. We're going to be having guests at least once per month. And increasingly, they're going to be our friends and people who, of course, we connect with, but also just unique individuals who we either aspire to be or think that we can help, or both in that specific scenario. So I would like to really have the CEO of the company that I work for come on and it be an interview, and I know for a fact we would learn a lot. I was just telling Omar before the podcast, I've learned a lot just talking to him in the brief moments that I have. I'd like to also have the COO, the Chief Operating Officer, who is amazing. She's great. A couple of different people from my company I think would be good. Overall, for maybe someone who's trying to become a machine learning engineer or a data scientist or a graphic designer. I've made friends with quite a few coworkers from my job. So I'm really looking forward to personally like those guests. And then further on from just interviews, like Omar has talked about, collaborations, not just with other podcasts, but also with, again, unique individuals in our community who are doing something that we want to do, who are embodying something that we love and we really connect to. That is what I'm really looking forward to personally. So that's one of the things that you can look forward to. Omar, what else do we have coming up?
Just to add to that first point, essentially think of it as like people like coming from different walks of life, right? Different from our own. So in that sense, you could be a CEO, you could have your own business, you could be a student, you could be younger than us, you could be older than us. I mean, literally, anything new that you can bring to the podcast, anything new that you can bring to the table is a plus for us, and as well as a plus for the listeners. So essentially think of it as like people coming from different walks of life. And I'm very excited for that as well. Definitely looking forward to that. Number two is different kinds of content, right? So recently we've started introducing new forms of reels, right? Which is, kind of like the equivalent of like TikTok, right? But actually right before we started recording this episode, we mentioned that as something that we should potentially look into. TikTok itself, right? But stepping a bit further from that is essentially just trying to get ourselves onto different platforms, whether it be different platforms that you could tune into us through, or just other forms of social media where we're present. As of right now, we're only on Instagram, but it would probably be a very wise idea to try to grow ourselves by coming onto other, social media platforms. So TikTok could be one of them. Maybe we make a presence on Facebook. Who knows? But the idea is essentially to kind of spread our wings, to let our roots grow a little bit deeper, right? And get to different people that perhaps aren't on Instagram. So that's something that we're trying to do as well, is create different kind of content and just be represented on different social media platforms.
Yep. So expect new guests, expect new content, expect to continue to see our beautiful new logo. Duh. And
absolutely.
In the future, this is a little bit further down, but still definitely something to look forward to. Some merchandise, stickers are probably the first ones that we'll just do because we have a good idea of how to do it. But as Omar said, I would also love, because our new logo is gorgeous now, so I would also love to have that on a shirt, have that on a sweater, have that on a sticker in the back of my laptop. So all of these things, again, we acknowledge that they're going to take a lot of time. They're going to take a good amount of effort, because we're not going to do it the cheap way. We're not going to do it just to get it out there. We're going to really put effort behind this, but you can all expect, frankly, amazing things coming in the future. And nice. I say that in a very humble manner.
Yeah, very humble. Very humble. Yeah, I'm excited for the future. And the thing is, we're not stopping anytime soon. If we didn't stop in the beginning when it was just a hobby, I mean, there's no way we're stopping now.
There's no stopping now. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the different levels that we'll reach with this podcast, I think we'll even surprise ourselves at some point. It's a pleasure to do this with you. Thanks for being my co-host, my favorite co-host, and only co-host.
Exactly.
And yeah, thank you to the people that are listening and tuning into us and supporting us. Even if you're just clicking on this by accident, or if you're just clicking it the one time, or if you're viewing our stuff on Instagram and you maybe shared it with somebody else, or you just commented or whatever, even if it was the one time, the two times, the three times, if you shared it, didn't share it, just any effort that you put into trying to promote us or share us, or just giving us a view, a like, anything. Yeah. Thank you. Honestly, it goes a long way.
I'll assume the Omar role here, and also do the shameless plug-in. Definitely check us out on Instagram, IG, Spotify, Anchor, iTunes, Google Podcasts, all of the above. Potentially, who knows? You'll see us in other social medias as well, but definitely we're on IG, so check us out right there. And no wow for this one, because actually, you know what? No wow for this one. We'll just leave you guys with stay tuned. Really stay tuned.
I like that. Okay.
All right.
Stay tuned, everybody.
Stay tuned. See y'all.